Number 10. Chupacabra. A couple in Texas claim to have captured the elusive Chupacabra. For those who don't know what the Chupacabra is, it's a mythical creature known for attacking livestock and sucking the blood from farm animals. Specifically, it loves slurping blood from cows and goats. Sightings of the creature have been reported primarily in Latin America, though they have spread recently into the southern United States. The Texas couple who allegedly caught the creature are residents of Radcliffe, and amazingly, they captured it alive. The creature has a hairless back, very large claws, and a mouth filled with teeth. According to an eyewitness, a local hunter in the region, he has never seen anything like it in 20 years. It's definitely not a raccoon or opossum, and it makes a noise unlike any local Texas animal. Brent Ortego with Texas Parks and Wildlife says it's some kind of small canine, maybe a fox, but it certainly doesn't look like one. The creature was handed over to wildlife officials who have been feeding it cat food and corn, though it still hasn't been properly identified and could realistically be anything, even a mutant. Number 9. Mutant Fish. Speaking of mutants, a weird fish that has been terrifying locals in Russia was finally caught, and some claim it's a ferocious mutant. The mysterious fish was reported trying to bite people living near Lake Krugau, Siberia. The fish had rows of sharp teeth and an unusually thick tail that it could use to whack people on the feet. Some fear the mutant fish is the result of radioactive waste dumped into the lake by a nearby chemical factory. It's about 4 feet long and was finally hooked by a fisherman who took some photos of the creature after dumping it on land. It seems to have the head of a giant piranha yet the body of a small cod, making it look both scary and disturbing. However, experts later identified the creature as a wolffish, not a mutant. But this doesn't make the mystery any less mysterious because wolffish are usually found in the Arctic Sea, not in Siberian lakes. How it got there is a total mystery. Number 8. Photobombing Sea Creature. A tourist was recently left baffled after a strange sea monster photobombed them. The tourist from Scotland, Harvey Robertson, was on a boat cruise with his family in Corfu, Greece, when he took a bunch of photographs inside a creepy sea cave. He was holding the camera over the edge of the boat and taking pictures of the black water. When he checked the photographs later, he realized that a strange monster was caught in one of the frames. According to Robertson himself, he had no idea what the thing was and had never seen anything like it before in all his life. So far, nobody has been able to identify the weird beast. It doesn't help that the picture is a little blurry. However, some have suggested it could be some strange sea creature from Greek mythology, like an ugly siren still living inside the cave, completely unknown to science. Number 7. Giant Rat. A giant rat has been pulled out of the sewer in Mexico City. Local residents had their socks scared off their feet when the huge rat was hoisted out of the drainage system. The rat stood over 6 feet tall and was dumped onto the concrete along with 22 tons of trash and rubbish pulled out of the underground by city workers. Of course, it wasn't a real rodent at all, but a realistic Halloween prop. Still, the bizarre catch was enough to freak out people who saw it, with some of them first thinking there really were mutant rats living in their sewers. Later, a woman named Evelyn Lopez came forward to claim the rat as her own creation. She crafted the thing herself, but it had washed away several years ago during a big storm. How in the world such a giant rat managed to wash down into the sewers is beyond reason. How did it even fit? But hey, at least her and the big ugly rat have been reunited. Maybe she'll use it as a decoration next Halloween. Number 6. Werewolf. In Montana, a rancher shot and killed something that looked like a small werewolf. Either that, or it was an unusually mutated bear, or a real-life direwolf. The animal looked very strange and puzzled animal experts all over the nation. Was it an ordinary wolf that happened to look a little weird, or a true monster? According to CBS News, the mystery of the killed werewolf was so serious that a DNA test was ordered to determine the true identity of the animal. After the hunter killed the animal, he contacted Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks. They showed up to take photos of it and post them online. It had grayish fur, a very large head, and legs that were a little too short to belong to a wolf. After a month of waiting, the DNA tests finally came back, and the mystery was solved. In the end, it was just an ordinary grey wolf. This is according to testing done by the US Fish and Wildlife Service at their lab in Oregon. Nobody knows why the wolf looked so unusual, like a scrappy little monster. Maybe it was just born with abnormally short legs and an unusually terrifying face filled with sharp, werewolf-like teeth. Number 5. Deadly Sawfish. A horrifying sea monster has been caught near the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. It was one of the rarest catches that a fisherman can make in the state, about as rare as sighting the legendary skunk ape. After a brutal 20 minutes of playing tug-of-war with the unknown creature, Kevin Thoreau finally gained enough ground to yank it out of the water. That was when he saw what it was: a sawfish. Sawfish catches are very rare. The animal itself is something of an underwater enigma. It has a long, heavy body that it uses to lay on the bottom of the sea where it hunts. The fish also has a pair of dorsal fins and a powerful tail that make it quite the fisherman's adversary. Of course, the most prominent feature of the sawfish is its huge saw, what marine biologists call a rostrum. It sticks out of the fish's face like a hedge trimmer, about 5 feet long. The enormous fish uses its saw to stun small fish. It swings the saw back and forth until it hits something. Then it collects whatever it managed to stun from the bottom of the sea. Number 4. Colossal Squid. A fishing crew recently captured a colossal squid that weighed about half a ton and may just be the biggest of its kind ever captured by human beings. It weighs an estimated 990 pounds and is 39 feet long from the tip of its tentacle to the top of its head. It took the fishermen about 2 hours to catch it in Antarctic waters, according to the fisheries minister Jim Anderton in New Zealand. The fishermen weren't actually looking for a squid. Instead, they were trying to catch Patagonian toothfish south of New Zealand. The squid accidentally got hooked and was reeled all the way to the surface, but by the time it breached the water, it was pretty much already dead. The crew then had to work to get the specimen on board without damaging it. Not only is this the biggest colossal squid ever caught, it's also the first adult male specimen to have ever been successfully captured while still alive. But what's the difference between the giant squid and the colossal squid? The giant squid is actually bigger. Think of the colossal squid like its smaller, less frightening cousin. They can only grow to be about 46 feet, whereas the giant squid can grow to be over 60 feet. These beasts of the deep descend to around 6,500 feet beneath the surface and are notorious for being vicious hunters. The creature captured had eyes about the size of dinner plates and was transported to New Zealand's National Museum for scientific study. Number 3. Humanoid Creature. Reports have been coming in that a tourist managed to get some video footage of an unknown humanoid creature captured in a cage inside an abandoned Romanian zoo. Before we go any further, keep in mind that other than the obscure video footage posted online by the young tourist, there has been no confirmation of the creature's existence by any mainstream media or professional scientists. But here's what the tourist says happened. He was visiting Ornești City in Romania and decided to check out an abandoned zoo that closed down in 2007 for unknown reasons. After asking around a bit with the locals, the tourist heard rumors that the zoo was actually once used for genetic experiments. After the tourist, who refused to give his name, snuck into the abandoned zoo, he recorded a strange being trapped inside of a cage. It screamed and flailed and made horrible noises, and the tourist ran off scared for his life. He didn't dare go back or even discuss what he'd seen until he was far away from the city. To this day, we have no answer or explanation for what he witnessed. If it was a genetically modified creature or the result of some failed human experiment. Number 2. GianEyed Fish. Russian fishing enthusiast Roman Fedortsov spends most of his days on fishing trawlers. At 39 years old, he's been working on trawlers for just about half his life on this planet. Recently, he began uploading some photographs he's collected of the bizarre animals that he reeled up from the deepest depths of the ocean. Most of these creatures come from the Norwegian or Barents Sea, some even from the Atlantic Ocean. According to Roman himself, some of the most bizarre fish he's caught include frilled shark, big sunfish, stoplight loosejaw, and even rabbitfish. But not all his catches are recognizable. For example, there was one fish he reeled in that had an eyeball growing out of its back. Nobody knows what the weird creature was. Just another unidentified freaky fish from the darkest deeps of the ocean. Maybe even a mutant, three-eyed fish. Number 1. Eyeless Monster. Speaking of eyes, a mysterious creature with no eyes washed up on a beach in South Carolina and nobody could identify it. The terrifying monster had huge teeth, a weirdly shaped body, and it left Erica Constantine, the poor woman who found the thing while walking a dog, a little shaken. Erica's lived in the region for at least 5 years and has never seen anything like this. It looked like it was some kind of bone monster with almost none of its skin left. Even worse is that nobody could agree on its origin. The cops said it was a possum, some said it was a seal, and others claimed it to be a blood-sucking Chupacabra. Erica even sent pictures of the creature to her friend at the College of Charleston to try and get answers, but it did no good. This scary creature is still unidentified. Number 9. Giant barrel jellyfish. Jellyfish can be found all throughout the ocean, and not unlike many other species, they come in all shapes and sizes. In 2019, 2 divers were shocked and amazed when they came face to face with a giant jellyfish known as the giant barrel jellyfish. There are some jellies that have incredibly long tentacles, like the lion's mane jellyfish, which has tentacles over 30 meters long. But the giant barrel jellyfish is known for its massive bell, and it is well over the size of a human, as Dan Abbott and Lizzie Daly would discover. The cream-coloured jellyfish was spotted off the coast of Cornwall, England. It's known to get large, but I haven't seen one this big, Daly told CBS News. Dan said he hasn't seen one this big either. Their appearance is quite distinctive. They're the largest jellyfish you can get here in the UK waters. Daly said, they're not a threat to humans. They have a mild sting, but wouldn't cause damage to humans, which they would then prove by swimming alongside the jellyfish for well over an hour, and it didn't seem to mind their company at all. It was a beautiful and peaceful encounter that they're not likely to ever forget. Number 8. The lionesses and the kidnapped girl. There have been many times when humans and animals have saved each other from harm in one form or another, but sometimes it goes beyond the rational logic of it all, and it delves into the realms of whether these creatures know more than we think they do. Such as the case of 3 lions who actually saved a girl from being kidnapped. This happened in Ethiopia, where a little 12-year-old girl was taken by 4 men, with their goal to try and get her to marry one of them. Yuck! They held her captive for over a week, and then the police finally got a location on them. But by the time they had reached that location, they were already gone. The kidnappers took the girl and ran, which would usually end badly for the girl, except that the group ran into a trio of lions. The lions scared the men away. The kidnappers ran for their lives and left the girl. Given what we know of lions, you'd expect them to eat the girl next, as she's easy prey, right? Wrong. Reports say the girl was crying when the lions saw her. Maybe the lions thought she was a young cub. We will never know for sure, but anywho, they protected her in case the kidnappers came back. This is the kind of story you just can't make up. The police eventually got to where the girl was, and they were amazed by what they saw. She was unharmed, and the lions even let her go to the police officers. As noted, humans and lions don't have the best history with one another, but in this case, they were not only able to see that this girl was in danger, but that she needed to be protected until her pride came along and saved her. Truly, just an amazing encounter. Number 7. The Dolphin and Dick Van Dyke. Dick Van Dyke is one of the most famous actors in history, with credits like The Dick Van Dyke Show, Diagnosis Murder, Mary Poppins, and more. He was even a guest on The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson, and the host asked Van Dyke if he had ever surfed near his California home. Dyke noted that he did do this once upon a time, but told a story as to why he wouldn't do it anymore. According to him, he almost died while surfing one day. He was in the ocean, not a care in the world. He was chilling so hard he fell asleep. When he awoke, he wasn't on his board anymore, and he was in open water. Usually, this would be a death sentence, as open water is extremely dangerous, but not for Dick Van Dyke. You see, something was keeping him afloat, and as he felt around, he could feel fins. At first, he feared it was sharks, but in fact, it was a pod of dolphins. They not only kept him afloat, but they carried him back to shore and to safety. While it's true that actors do like to embellish stories, Van Dyke claimed his story was 100% true. Dolphins are known to be quite friendly with humans and even save their lives on multiple occasions. Did that happen here with Dick Van Dyke? Only the man himself knows for sure. Number 6. Bear vs. Lion. Robert Biggs was enjoying a day of hiking through the woods of California when off in the distance he noticed some bears, a mother and her cub. More often than not, this is going to end bad for the human because mother bears are very aggressive when it comes to protecting their young. Robert knew this and stayed still, just watching them, which was a wise decision based on what he knew at the time. The problem was that he too was being watched by a mountain lion. The wildcat attacked him from behind. He grabbed me from behind and knocked me to the ground, Biggs told the Huffington Post. I was on my knees. I had my rock pick out because I was on a steep incline and I smashed the cat in the head with it. He screamed, but he didn't let go. Then something amazing happened. The mother bear saw or heard what was happening and rushed in to save Biggs. She fought the mountain lion off. It was no match for Mama Bear. After a victory, the bear left Biggs alone and he was able to head home with only a few scrapes. But according to Biggs, the bear was doing more than just defending its own. "I'm 100% sure it did want to save my life," he said. "We made eye contact. I'd seen the bears before and I knew she knew who I was." What an amazing story! Why do you think the bear came to Robert Biggs's rescue? What would you have done in the situation? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Whale Breach. Reader's Digest has always been one to look into the honest and heartwarming stories of people, to see what kind of incredible experiences they've had in their lives. And for one woman named Amy Motherwell, she had an encounter with a whale that was apparently quite breathtaking. "My most memorable wildlife encounter was holidaying in Albany, Western Australia. We were out in the bay in a small tinny when a whale and her calf began to get close to our boat. We moved away, and just a moment later the whale breached completely out of the water in the wake of our boat. It was one of the best things I have ever had the privilege to see." Not surprisingly, this is one of the appeals of going on the water near whales, because they are often willing to put on a show in one form or another. And just being that close to them is something special as well. Hopefully she didn't get too soaked when the whale did breach, but we don't think that she would have cared. Number 4. The Microbat. Another tale from Reader's Digest in regards to an amazing animal encounter comes from Rosie Rose, who noted that while she was on her way to a car one time, she saw something odd on the ground. At first, she thought it was a moth because of its size. However, as she went down to pick it up, she found herself looking at a microbat. And while some might have been put off by that, Rosie wasn't. In fact, she tried to do her best for her new guest. "I then spent the whole night researching about bats and food and whatever else I could. Seeing as I live in the middle of nowhere, there aren't a lot of people about that can help. But I had spoken to wildlife groups and had formula ordered and was already madly in love with my guest. She was very careful in how she fed and washed him, and she was able to watch him grow and even trained him to react to different calls she made for him. Although the bat died not too long after, his presence helped her and her neighbors understand the wonder and truth about bats as a whole, such as how they keep the insect population down and occasionally protect Gotham City. For such a tiny bit of my life, he left a big mark on my heart. Aww. Number 3. Mr. Souza and the Penguin. João de Souza was a 71-year-old man living in Rio de Janeiro. He had lost his wife, and in an effort to cope with the loneliness, he would go walking along the beach. But one day in 2011, as he was doing his walk by the beach, he came across a little South American Magellanic penguin that appeared to be struggling. The poor penguin was covered in oil, which was killing it. João saved the penguin from the waters and took it home. He slowly and carefully cleaned the penguin so that it could be better, which is indeed the proper way of handling the situation when it comes to animals covered in oil. Once back to full strength, João took the penguin back to the ocean so that it could go back to wherever it came from. But the penguin didn't seem like he wanted to leave João. So he named the penguin Din Dim, and much to João's delight, every day Din Dim kept coming back to visit. Since they met, the penguin, which normally breeds on the Patagonia coasts of Argentina and Chile, thousands of miles away, has become a faithful companion, swimming every year from its habitat to spend up to 8 months living with a lonely retired fisherman in his house on the island, showing a connection that goes beyond mere gratitude. "I love the penguin like it's my own child, and I believe the penguin loves me," said Mr. Souza in an interview with Globo TV, in which the bird honks with delight as he recognizes his human friend. "No one else is allowed to touch him. He pecks them if they do. He lays on my lap, lets me give him showers, allows me to feed him sardines and to pick him up." Now this is a story that is worthy of Disney, and it shows that animals are more than happy to show their gratitude to those that have helped them from terrible situations. Number 2. Mila the beluga whale. Most whale species are known for being both kind and playful with humans, and for one whale named Mila, she was able to sense danger and saved a human's life. In China, there was a banal apnea competition going on, which is basically a type of freediving that leads to people getting really deep in the water, and then they hold their breath for as long as possible. Yang Yun was one such competitor, and she was doing it in a beluga whale pond. As she was doing her run, she realized that something was very wrong with her leg. It was cramped in the freezing water. Unable to swim, she was basically doomed to die. Remember, she was holding her breath. To the shock of all, a beluga whale swam around and saw she was in trouble. Mila, as she would be named, realized Yun was struggling and actually clamped onto her leg without causing severe pain, and then brought her up back to the surface. "I felt this incredible force under me driving me to the surface," Yun said. An organizer of the event credited Mila with saving Yun's life. "She's a sensitive animal who works closely with humans, and I think this girl owes her life." Whales are incredibly intelligent creatures that are to be respected and honored. Number 1. The dingo. In Australia, there are all kinds of wildlife, and a lot of animals in the outback are deadly and no doubt want to kill you. So it's not surprising that some people have incredible animal encounters, but not all of them are amazing in a good way. Some of them are amazing in a scary way, such as what happened with Carla Walker. She was down under on Fraser Island, and after going for a walk, she found herself looking at a dingo. Dingoes are a type of dog that are infamous for their interactions with humans, and in this case, it didn't want to let Carla go away. I was intrigued, but kept on walking. But the dingo kept on walking too. I tried telling it to get lost, no reaction from the dingo. I then decided to try and move around the dingo. It kept moving with me, almost mirroring what I was doing. I then tried going into the water, thinking surely the dingo wouldn't want to come in. I walked until the water was over my ankles and the dingo walked right on in too. It didn't want me going anywhere. Dingoes may look like cute dogs, but they are the largest land predator in Australia and are considered top of the food chain apex predators. For the most part, dingoes are carnivores, but they also eat fruit, grains, and nuts at times. They eat small to medium game, whatever's on the menu. Was Carla on the menu? She was starting to worry about what would happen when suddenly a car drove up and honked its horn. This distracted the dingo enough, and Carla took the opportunity to run and jump into the car so that she could be rushed away. And that's probably as close as she ever wants to get to a dingo ever again. But was the dingo trying to hurt her? Or maybe he just wanted to be a pet? What do you think? 12. Doberman. As one of the most intimidating looking dogs out there, it comes as no surprise that the Doberman has a prolific military history. These tough pups are known to be smart and fiercely loyal, and they have incredible guarding capabilities. Since they are just so dang smart, these dogs are very easy to train, making them perfect for military services. Their use in combat can be traced as far back as World War I as well as World War II. The Doberman had many jobs, including locating mines from the enemy, rescuing wounded soldiers on the battlefield, being guard dogs at camp, and delivering messages to different bases. Sadly, some were even used as suicide dogs. Similar to suicide bombers, the pups would be fitted with explosives and sent towards the enemy where they'd be detonated remotely. This is just one of the harsh realities of war. They served diligently, with one dog even receiving a letter of commendation from a US Lieutenant General. The Doberman's name was Rex, and he successfully warned troops in World War II of Japanese soldiers nearing their camp. The letter reads as follows: "Rex's action was undoubtedly instrumental in saving the lives of many Marines. Rex and Dobermans like him will be remembered as treasured canine soldiers." Number 11. Rottweiler. Rottweilers are one of the oldest dog breeds on historical record, being traced back all the way to the Roman Empire. The origins of their name come from a small German town back in 73 AD. They were commonly used as guard dogs back then, and unsurprisingly, still are today. These pups are known for their willingness to work, paired with their incredible strength. Centuries ago, the Rottweiler was used to guard the money pouches of butchers, but their job responsibilities soon increased. Years went by and the dogs were used for anything from pulling carts to herding livestock, but when the Industrial Revolution hit and railroads started popping up, the demand for them dwindled. As countries started warring with one another and it seemed the whole world was against each other, their popularity saw a resurgence. In World War I, Rottweilers were used as police dogs for their reliability and ableness to obey commands. Later on, they got more jobs as messengers, rescue dogs, and in helping with drafts. These dogs have truly been good boys for millennia. Number 10. German Shepherd. Probably one of the most common and well-known dogs in the service, the German Shepherd is a diligent breed. They were first used in the military by the Germans back in the early 1900s by Captain Max von Stephanitz. The captain created the breed by selectively breeding his most intelligent dogs. After many years, he had the perfect pup for the German police force. The shepherds showed great skill in tracking and were extremely obedient. Stephanitz thought his dogs could do more, and he was just in time to test their abilities out during World War I. German shepherds served as messengers in the field and alongside soldiers as ammunition carriers. They were even able to lead the wounded and those blinded by wounds to medical help. It was this work that led to the first seeing eye dogs. Impressed by the skillful dog's acts of heroics, the Americans and English began to create their own arsenal of pups. In World War II, the US used German shepherds as messengers, which led to canine training camps to pop up around the country. The training can last anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks for the dogs, and once they complete it, they are tested on a special training course. There are 4 main positions these dogs can have: scouting, patrolling, detecting bombs, or messenger. Upon completion of the course, they are sent alongside their handlers into war dog platoons. A special bond is formed between these dogs and the soldiers, to the point that they become more than just animals, but are comrades to those in military service. German shepherds have proved themselves to be man's best friend, no matter the front. 9. Belgian Malenoir. Another entry from the shepherd family, the Belgian Malenoir was bred for high energy and learning ability. These innate skills help them succeed in the toughest conditions, whether it be for detection, security, or protection. If you can believe it, some overachieving dogs even know how to skydive. On top of all of this, the Belgian Malenoir has an amazing sense of smell, allowing them to rescue anyone in need. Their kind disposition makes them perfect for search and rescue work. And these clever puppies are even able to sniff out dangerous explosives. They're employed all over the world in Canada, the US, and even here down under in Australia. These pups are one of the best breeds in the world for use in military and security. Do you think your dog could be trained to skydive? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 8. Yorkshire Terrier, Smokey. This next listing will probably surprise a lot of you if you know anything about the breed. Yorkshire Terriers are very small dogs, so you might wonder how they could be of use to the military. Well, in World War II, one tiny terrier named Smokey did the unthinkable and served as a critical asset to American troops in the Philippines. At the Allied airfield located on the Lingayen Gulf of Luzon, Japanese plane attacks were doing a number on US communication lines. They were in desperate need of help to run new telephone lines through a small pipe that went 70 feet or 21 meters under the soldiers' feet. But the US soldiers had none of the right equipment, so the job would have left them completely vulnerable to attack and taken them days to complete. They did have one choice though: Smokey. The pup belonged to one of the men named Corporal Bill Wine, who adopted her in New Guinea. They tied a kite string onto Smokey's collar and sent her on through the pipe. Utilizing the string, the men were able to thread phone wires through the piping. That day, little Smokey saved over 250 men with her work. She would go on to continue service as a therapy dog for wounded veterans for many years. Smokey is a true inspiration to us all. 7. Huskies. Huskies have long been used as working dogs. Most people know them as being sled dogs in northern parts of the world. One example of sled dogs in the military dates back to 1898, when Major General Joseph Kastner was tasked with exploring the interior side of Alaska. He used dog teams made up of Huskies to explore and map out the vast region. During the Alaskan Gold Rush in the 1890s, another Army officer, Lieutenant William Mitchell, was sent to connect the icy Alaskan mountains to the telegraph system. To accomplish this, he received help from locals on how to properly mush dogs, then put his newly learned skills to the test. Huskies went with him, carrying loads of equipment large distances across the terrain. Thanks to them, Mitchell was able to finish his job a full 3 years earlier than his expected timeline. In World War II, the dogs served as search and rescue operatives since they were able to traverse through rough tundra terrain. Their loyalty and proven ability is why Huskies are still used for service today. 6. Giant Schnauzer. Loyal and courageous, the giant Schnauzer stands 70 centimeters tall and weighs about 43 kilos. They are fiercely hard workers and are employed as police, military, guide, and rescue dogs all around the world. One such Schnauzer named Brock worked as a part of former President Donald Trump's Secret Service detail. He was trained in the 341st Training Squadron at San Antonio Lackland, Texas. Although you wouldn't be able to tell now, Brock went down in history at the base as one of the hardest dogs to train. When first paired with his handler, Sergeant Dominic Young, Brock wouldn't follow commands and was very headstrong. Eventually, the pair formed a strong bond through hard work and became one of the best handler teams out there. Brock, like many of his Schnauzer brothers, knows what it means to work hard, which makes the giant Schnauzer an asset as a military dog breed. 5. Boxer. Everyone wanted the perfect hunting dog back in the 1800s, one that was super strong and able to keep up with its human partner. So, breeders began the task of breeding the now extinct Bull and Beaser with the English Bulldog, leading to the lovable Boxer we have today. Their features were made for the art of hunting, with a wide jaw for latching onto prey, facial wrinkles to guard its eyes from blood splatter, and large nostrils for breathing while its mouth held animals. Back then, flat-faced dogs were thought to be very useful, but medical knowledge today shows us they usually have breathing difficulties. I mean, do you know anyone with a bulldog that doesn't snore? All of these traits helped the Boxer serve as messenger dogs during World War I. They also helped carry supplies and packs to soldiers in need. After the nightmare of the Second World War, Boxers were a popular choice in comfort and family dogs for returning veterans due to their strong disposition but family-friendly attitude. 4. Airedale Terrier. These dogs are often described as war heroes from World War I. Airedale Terriers are highly intelligent canines and were capable of performing the most difficult jobs in the toughest conditions. Their bravery and perseverance enable them to see whatever job they were given through to its end. Oddly enough, some Airedales were trained to use gas masks for their safety while delivering packages to troops on the front lines. Using this transport method, the dogs would often bring medical supplies sent by the Red Cross to wounded soldiers. They saved many lives doing their job in such scary circumstances. The BBC News covered one story of a brave Airedale named Jack who persevered through a war-torn battlefield to ask for reinforcements for his battalion. Lieutenant Colonel Alistair Pietri recounts the dog's heroics. A piece of shrapnel smashed his jaw, but he carried on, and another shell tore open his coat right down his back, and he kept on going. Finally, his forepaw was shattered, but he dragged his body for the last 3 kilometers. There was the glaze of death in his eyes when he reached headquarters, but he's done his work. He'd saved his battalion. Jack is a true British hero and should forever be remembered as one. His dedication to his comrades went above and beyond the average soldiers. This truly shines a light on the loyalty and dedication Airedale Terriers have. 3. Labrador Retriever. Labs are known for their friendliness and are one of the most popular dog breeds in the world, but they also know how to work. During the Vietnam era, Labradors were used as trackers since they can tolerate heat and genuinely enjoy sniffing the ground. Whenever they found the target they were searching for, they would signal their comrades with a wag of the tail, ear twitch, tilting their heads, or stopping dead in their tracks. After reaching the age of 2 years old, the dogs would be sent into an 8-month-long training course. Once finished, they could serve up to 6 years in military action. In their training, they were never taught how to attack an enemy. They only knew how to fiercely defend their handlers in any circumstance. Oftentimes, their tracking ability would lead to finding wounded soldiers and even enemies if necessary. It's terribly sad to hear, but 6 labs were killed in action. And after the Vietnam War ended, the dogs were not allowed back into the US for fear that they may carry disease. Most of the labs were either euthanized or simply left in the country. It's truly heartbreaking, but these good boys and girls performed their duty, some until their very last breath. 2. Belgian Sheep Dog, Groenendael. Although other dogs on this list served as message carriers, the first ever messenger dog during World War I was Taki, a Belgian sheepdog. And no, not Taki like the chips. French military had begun using the sheepdogs, also known as Groenendaels, in 1914. In many battlefields, there were no transmission wires set for communication, so they had to rely on another method of correspondence. Dogs like Taki. As the youngest trained dog they had, Taki was the test runner for message carrying. She was given a message written in code inside of a waterproof capsule. Thankfully, she made it through, setting the standard of service for other Belgian sheepdogs. Thanks to the hard work of Taki, other canines of her breed are now able to serve in police work as well as the military. Another noteworthy Belgian sheepdog was named Cairo, who worked with Navy SEAL Team 6 during the attack on Osama bin Laden. Number 1. Bouvier de Flanders. Popularly used as herding dogs, the Bouvier is a large and strong breed. They have a thick double coat that's water-resistant and typically have a long beard-like tuft of hair around their mouth. In fact, another name for the dogs, Vouillard, literally translates to dirty beard. They were originally bred for herding cattle in the countryside of Flanders, Belgium. Their name actually means cow dog or cattle driver, and they were the ultimate all-rounder farm dog. Some of their farm duties consisted of guarding livestock, pulling carts, transporting goods, and some were even adept at churning butter. I hope they got a salary. But as hostilities grew and Belgium entered World War I, their responsibilities would shift in a whole new direction as Flanders would soon turn into a battleground. They served as message carriers and ambulance pullers. Sadly, many of the dogs would lose their life in the line of service, and the breed was on the brink of extinction. Thankfully, they would see a resurgence due to the hard work of some of the fans of the breed. Because of this, they were once again able to serve in World War II. Nowadays, Bouviers serve as police and service dogs, thanks to their energetic, intelligent nature. Just like all of the other dogs on this list, the Bouvier is fit for the line of duty. Number 10. Cookie Cutter Shark. No, I know what you're thinking, but this shark is not interested in cookies, cakes, or baked goods of any kind. No, the cookie cutter shark gets its name for one reason and one reason only. When it bites something, it leaves grisly wounds shaped sort of like the edges of cookies. This creepy sea creature attaches itself to its victims with lips like a vacuum cleaner and doesn't let go. Then it spins its teeth in such a way to rip out a chunk of flesh, just like a cookie cutter. Other than being an underwater vampire, the cookie cutter shark appears fairly normal from the outside. It's a tubular fish shaped like a cigar that lives in the deep water, around 3,000 feet down, mostly around Australia and Tasmania. Scientists have found its mark left on a wide variety of animals, including seals. Apparently, it doesn't always kill the victim to get a chunk ripped out by the cookie cutter shark. Sometimes large fish and sea creatures are found washed ashore, with perfectly circular pieces of flesh missing from their bodies. The only possible cause is always the cookie cutter shark. It takes its bite and then swims away, leaving an unmistakable mark. Number 9. The Terrible Claw Lobster. The Terrible Claw Lobster is absolutely horrifying. It goes by a few different names, such as Ozerbol's Mighty Claw Lobster or its scientific name, Dinochelys orsibelli. The creature was discovered in 2010, only about 700 feet beneath the ocean under the largest island in the Philippines, Luzon. It's a brightly colored crustacean, but at first glance it seems like it has a chainsaw attached to one of its claws. It's pink and red and a little bit purple, and it's the only crustacean ever discovered with such an unusual claw. Ron O'Dore, a senior scientist studying these incredible creatures, said that most lobsters generally have one big claw and one little claw. But this one's big claw looks like evolution gone wild. It's monstrous compared to the rest of the creature, and colorful like a child's messy art project. There are a few things to know about this bizarre lobster monster. According to Australian Geographic, it's completely blind. Scientists also aren't quite sure what it uses its abnormally large appendage for. Its massive claw is covered in what appear to be spiky teeth, though what it does with it is still a mystery. It might use the claw for battling rival lobsters during mating season. It could also have something to do with how it regulates its body temperature. Because scientists only just discovered the lobster and haven't had time to study it yet, and they haven't seen it use its claws in the wild, they can only speculate why the lobster evolved such a terrifying appendage. Number 8. Pacific Viperfish. The Pacific Viperfish is, well, a terrible nightmare. It's a slim and silvery fish equipped with a bioluminescent stomach. It's a fearsome predator that preys on smaller fish and helpless shrimp, coming up to the surface of the ocean from where it lives down in the deepest depths to feast before it scurries back down into the darkness. The reason the Pacific Viperfish is so scary is that it has teeth like needles sticking out of its face. Its two front fangs stick up from the bottom of its jaw so far that they pass its eyeballs. The viperfish is also able to unhinge its jaws and open its mouth wide enough to slurp up prey like a hungry vacuum cleaner. Then, once it has its victim inside of its mouth, it's able to keep it from escaping thanks to its huge teeth that work like jail cell doors. It turns its own mouth into a cage. giving it the time it needs to swallow the squirming fish down into its gullet. I guess there's a reason they named it after the terrifying viper. Number 7. Shiny red crab. This disturbing creature is something straight out of your nightmares. The shiny red crab certainly does look different from other crabs. It has some rather strange adaptations to marine life that help it thrive in the ocean environment. Technically, the spiny red crabs are part of the king crab family. They're also sometimes known as porcupine crabs because their bodies are covered in pointy spines. The spines act as protection from predators, while their 3 pairs of legs and abnormally huge claws help them fight back when something even larger tries to eat them. The crab even has a 4th pair of legs directly underneath its body that it uses only to clean its gills. The creepy, spiny red crab can be found anywhere from 200 to 2,400 feet beneath the ocean, pretty much anywhere on the ocean floor. However, they do prefer warmer waters, and so they typically stay in the Atlantic Ocean. They are also quite opportunistic. The shiny red crab will scavenge corpses when it needs to, and hunt down sea stars and small fish and rip them apart with their massive claws when the opportunity arises. In fact, the shiny red crab is such an efficient predator that it has almost no enemies in the wild, except for human fishermen and the octopus. And just wait until you hear just how long these crabs can live for. They've been known to reach at least 30 years old, living about twice as long as most people's pet dogs. Would you ever want a shiny red crab as your pet? It would live an awfully long time. Tell me your thoughts on the best creepy sea creatures to own as a pet down in the comments below. Then remember, if you haven't subscribed to Epic Wildlife yet, go ahead and do that now. Number 6. Monkfish. The monkfish is yet another disgusting and creepy sea creature that you would never want to meet during a diving expedition. These creatures are also known as sea devils, and they're actually a type of anglerfish. Similar to the disturbing and villainous anglerfish of many nightmares, there are a lot of different classifications and it gets a bit confusing. But all you need to know is that the monkfish lives in the sand on the seafloor at about 3,000 feet deep. It's also immediately under threat because of uncontrolled fishing. The monkfish is really easy to pick out of the sand, and it doesn't help that it tastes appetizing to humans. But why is the monkfish so creepy? It's just the way it looks. It has an oversized mouth that looks ridiculously large compared to its body. It also hunts by hiding in the sand on the bottom of the ocean with its massive mouth gaped open, waiting for something yummy to swim over its greedy maw. It then lunges up very quickly to snatch up its prey. The monkfish even has a modified spine on its forehead that it uses to lure unsuspecting fish to swim over its wide open mouth. And then, when it does catch a fish, forget about chewing. The monkfish swallows it whole. Number 5. Hagfish. The hagfish is one of the most disgusting creatures anywhere in the ocean. It's a marine fish that produces slime. It's basically a slime fish. The slime produced by the hagfish is a gelatinous substance filled with protein, squirted out of the hagfish whenever it feels threatened. The weirdest part about the slime is that humans use it for a wide variety of things, from making clothes to building missiles. This is because the slime produced by the hagfish is stronger than nylon, it's extremely flexible, and the strands are even thinner than human hair. I guess some people believe that what we really need is a massive farm filled with hagfish releasing their unique slimy jelly for us to harvest for all types of industrial applications. But what about the hagfish itself? Well, it's just as gross as the slime it produces. It's been nicknamed the slime eel, despite it being a jawless fish that has no vertebral column. This means it has no skeleton. Its body is built completely out of cartilage, the same stuff that human ears are built out of. Because the hagfish doesn't have any bones, it's able to tie its body into a knot. Why does it do that? The answer may surprise you. It's intentional. It tied itself into a knot in order to help it squeeze and digest its food. The knot helps create a firm surface to use in smashing and crushing food while eating. That's partially because its teeth are not that strong, as they're only made of keratin, the same stuff your fingernails are made out of. But even if that doesn't scare you, don't ever try and wrangle a hagfish in the wild, or you'll end up with a face full of slime, which is basically fish mucus. Number 4. Electric ray. The electric ray isn't quite as creepy as it is fascinating, but more than that, it's just plain scary. The electric ray is just like a stingray, but a little different. Yes, it's a flat, cartilaginous fish that moves across the ocean floor, but it's of the electric variety, capable of producing a devastating electric discharge of up to 220 volts. So far as scientists are aware, there are 69 species of electric ray, with the most famous being the marbled electric ray for its massive size. The marbled electric ray is part of the genus Torpedo, named from the Latin word torpere, which means to be stiffened or paralyzed. This is in reference to the effect felt when a person steps on a living electric ray. It's almost like stepping on the electrified rail of a railroad track. An instant jolt of electricity runs through the body, stiffening and slightly paralyzing the poor person unfortunate enough to step on one of these rays. The voltage isn't enough to kill, but it can temporarily incapacitate a person long enough that they may even drown. Number 3. Marble-mouthed frogfish. The marble-mouthed frogfish is, to put it plainly, horribly ugly. It's just scary to look at. It looks like it has horrible sores all over its face, and it also looks like it might be kind of evil. Of course, it's not the fault of the poor frogfish that it looks like that, but nevertheless, it does not appear to be friendly at all. The frogfish is a type of anglerfish with a dorsal spine that it uses as a lure to trick other fish close to its mouth. The reason it's so disgusting is that it's camouflaged to blend in with the ocean environment where it lives. There are a bunch of different types of frogfish, but the marble-mouthed is by far the most hideous. It's also one of the rarest, thank God, found only occasionally in the wild. Scientists don't know much about this exact species, other than it's scary. They live primarily around the Philippines and North Borneo. They're covered in weird growths, and they have unusually long nostrils. The only good news is that this frogfish only grows to about 3 inches long, so you're unlikely to have a confrontation with one. Number 2. Faceless Cusil. The Faceless Cusil is a horrifying creature that doesn't appear to have a face. Of course, if you saw a fish swimming around without a face, you'd be shocked, but this fish manages to do it. It's one of the most bizarre animals ever found off the coast of Australia. According to Live Science, this creepy beast was recently rediscovered after more than a century without a single sighting. It has no discernible eyes and at first glance doesn't even seem to have a mouth. It's because the eel's mouth is located beneath its body. And even though it doesn't appear to have eyes, it actually does. They're just invisible under its skin. And as for that hidden mouth, it's kind of a nightmare. It might be hidden underneath its body, but once it opens the thing, it's like opening a doorway to certain death. It has a huge, gaping maw filled with close-set teeth that it uses to grind apart unsuspecting crustaceans. Number 1. Highin Lizardfish. The Highin Lizardfish is, depending on your outlook, either adorably ugly or scary and frightening. It has huge, dark eyes, a wide mouth full of teeth, and it's an almost psychedelic shade of blue. The lizardfish lives deeper than 3,000 feet in the midnight zone of the ocean, in a place where not a single ray of sunlight is able to penetrate. It can grow up to 2 feet long, but the largest ever recorded was an amazing 33 inches and weighed a whopping 15 pounds. That's pretty big for a lizardfish. The lizardfish is an apex predator in its own tiny world at the top of a very small underwater food chain, despite its small stature. It eats almost anything it can get a hold of, though it doesn't actively hunt. Instead, it lounges at the bottom of the ocean with its mouth hanging open, waiting patiently for something to get close enough to eat. It also isn't a picky eater. It will eat fish, crustaceans, and even cannibalize other lizardfish. It might even try and take a bite out of you if you stepped on it. Fortunately, you're never going to venture down that deep underwater, so you should be okay. Number 11. Shark vs. Paraglider. A 37-year-old man from Jordan was going on a paragliding adventure over the water, and at first, everything seemed to be going fine, but his fun quickly turned into a nightmare. According to a report by The Mirror, the man was attacked by a shark as he was in the midst of a parasailing session in the Gulf of Aqaba. As part of his experience, he tried to dive down and hover above the Red Sea while holding onto the parachute to get his feet wet. But when he did, a shark came ripping out of the water and literally bit his foot off. The man did survive, but this is an experience that he isn't likely to forget anytime soon. Number 10. Sharks on the golf course. Anyone who watches golf knows that sometimes animals can cause a bit of havoc on the green. Sometimes birds will pick up balls. Multiple crocodiles and alligators have gone onto the field before, and so on. Who knew animals like to golf? But one creature you wouldn't expect to encounter on the golf course is a shark, let alone multiple sharks. But that's exactly what happened near Brisbane, Australia. A storm had caused flooding near the golf course, and that naturally raised the water levels up to where the sharks, bull sharks in this case, were able to swim from the ocean to the water hazards of the golf course itself. But when the water levels went down to their regular levels, the sharks were still there. There were 6 bull sharks stuck in a little man-made lake. This gives new meaning to the phrase water hazard, and given the aggressive nature of bull sharks, we can say with much certainty that no one is going into the water for their golf balls with them in there. Not a chance. Number 9. Shark versus surfboard. There are certain kinds of people in the world right now that absolutely have a higher chance of getting attacked by sharks than others. People that spend a lot of time in the ocean, like surfers. They go out onto the open water in hopes of catching some gnarly waves, and since sharks call the ocean home, the two are bound to run into each other from time to time. For one surfer in South Carolina, he had quite the crazy encounter with one of these apex predators that didn't really end well. His name was Jack O'Neill, and apparently the shark was hungry and mistook O'Neill and his surfboard for a snack. O'Neill survived, but his surfboard wasn't so lucky. A person he showed it to posted about it online. He estimated the shark at 8 feet, and it knocked him off the board as he was paddling for a wave, they wrote on Facebook. The board snapped as it bounced to the beach after he pulled his leash off and escaped the shark. You never know what's lurking. It felt like somebody had put on the emergency brake. It felt like you had hit a rock, O'Neill said. The board just wobbled. It pulled off a shank of my board, peeled the complete bottom down to the stringer. Based on the information he had, some think it was a sandbar shark or a black-tipped shark. But regardless of what type of shark it was, O'Neill was fortunate to be alive. Number 8. The Mythbusters vs. Sharks Part 1. Anyone who is a fan of the show Mythbusters knows that when it came to the series, they loved testing their shark myths. They did several myths about Jaws, the Steven Spielberg film, and what that shark logically could have done. They also did a plethora of myths about real-life sharks and how to defend yourself against them, as well as to ensure that you don't attract them. For the Mythbusters Supersized Special, they did a myth about certain sounds being an excellent attractor for sharks, as they could sense frequencies that would allow them to know if an easy meal, aka prey, was nearby or hurt. To do this though, they needed to put one of the hosts in a shark cage so that they could see how the sharks reacted to the sounds. In the initial test for this, host Jamie Heineman was the man in the cage, and not too long after being put into the water, a great white shark swam up and then rammed the shark cage so hard that it actually burst through the top of the cage, getting its head pretty far into it. While it's true that Jamie wasn't injured, you could hear him reacting quite frantically as he's trying to explain how much danger he's in. And as fans of the series know, James Franklin Heineman doesn't scare easily, but having a shark full-on come into the cage that is supposed to keep them out will no doubt make you question ever doing such a thing again. And trust us when we say that the Mythbusters had plenty of unique interactions with sharks over the years. Would you ever get into a shark cage after hearing this story? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. Sharks without livers. In May 2017 in South Africa in the Western Cape province, 4 dead great white sharks washed up on the shores, but strangely, they were all missing their livers and other organs. Great white sharks are on top of the food chain, especially around South Africa where numerous attacks have been reported. So what would or could attack them and only take the livers and leave the rest of the fish? After some research, it was revealed that the culprits were killer whales. These whales are known to be rivals for sharks, but have never been documented attacking great whites like this. However, researchers say it's not unprecedented and that the orcas are known to go after the livers of creatures when they hunt and kill. Other parts of the sharks were missing too, including their stomachs at times and even their reproductive organs. While one mystery was solved, another began, because reports of this happening are rare, so it makes you wonder why the whales decided to go after these sharks and whether more sharks are having this happen to them across the world where these two species meet. Number 6. Dolphins keep sharks away. Dolphins have been known in real life to go and ward off sharks from certain areas and even come to the rescue of humans at times should a shark be attacking them. Why this happens is heavily debated. And to be clear, just because there are dolphins in an area next to you doesn't mean that sharks aren't there as well. For a long time, people actually questioned just how real this all was, and then the Mythbusters came along and showcased this happening in real time. They lured a shark into an area of water and then made an anatomically accurate dolphin model that would swim just like one to enter the area, and every single time they did that, the shark swam away scared. Add that to all the survivor stories of sharks being deterred or straight up attacked by dolphins trying to save humans, and you have a crazy interspecies encounter that seems like it shouldn't work, and yet it totally does. Number 5. Sharks vs. Drone. Dan Watson decided to take his wife and kids to New Smyrna Beach in Florida with some of their friends. A very nice mini vacation idea, and surely nothing could go wrong with that, right? Wrong. By the end of their trip, Watson had an idea. He had a drone in his car and decided to use it to hover above the beach and see just what he would be able to see from this unique perspective. The catch was that when he raised the drone up, he was able to notice that not too far away from where his kids were still playing in the water, there was a shark. Seeing this, he immediately screamed and got the kids out of the water by warning them about the impending attack. His timing was perfect, not the least of which was because it was the drone's camera that was able to see the shark through the water. Watson himself admitted that the shark couldn't be seen from the shore as its fin wasn't sticking out. And lest you think he was panicking over nothing, that beach is known for shark attacks, and a week later, a shark attacked a surfer. Now that's a close call. Number 4. Pacific Sleeper Shark. When researchers were looking at an active volcano near Papua New Guinea, they were stunned to find Pacific sleeper sharks in the area. "We were freaking out," said University of Rhode Island PhD student Brennan Phillips to National Geographic. Why was that the reaction? Because this shark didn't belong there. In terms of location, the sharks that were there were found near the Solomon Islands, but the Pacific sleeper shark is usually seen in northern waters, and more specific than that, they're usually seen in Arctic waters or waters close to it, meaning very cold and non-acidic waters. However, the temperature and acidity of these waters would be way more than the sharks are used to. This has caused many scientists to be quite literally baffled. It doesn't make sense that these sharks are not only living here, but are able to live here given their usual conditions. The idea of there being large animals like sharks hanging out and living around this volcano conflicts with what we know about Kavachi, one scientist noted. Other sharks like hammerheads have also been spotted in acidic volcano waters, so what exactly is going on here? Well, we don't know, and that's why it's a crazy encounter on its own. It proves once again that the ocean is full of mysteries and that these sometimes random encounters are the only way we'll get answers to things. Number 3. Sharks versus internet cables? This is an encounter that makes you wonder what's going through a shark's mind. As you likely know, the internet is able to work across the world because of massively long cables that are literally connecting countries and continents together. It was not easy to get them down there, and so it makes sense that they would want to protect the cables from damage. Thus, they line them with Kevlar. This was a good move, as many sharks are known to actually go after these cables and try to chew on them. Should one of them get through it, with their bite strength, they can quite easily do it if the Kevlar wasn't there. They would bring down the internet in certain places for quite a while. Why do the sharks go after them? It's hard to say, but probably because, well, they're there, and they can. Number 2. Mythbusters Shark Repellent. Our final Mythbusters story that features an odd shark encounter is honestly one of the coolest stories they've done featuring the species. Because many people want to know the best way to ward off sharks should they try to attack you. So the Mythbusters tested various types of substances to get rid of sharks, and none of them really worked. Magnets didn't work, sounds didn't work, and then they went and tested something very crazy. Essence of dead shark. Yes, for real. They housed essence of dead shark in a container, then went to an area that had Caribbean reef sharks and let them swarm around, and then popped the container to let the essence out into the waters. The sharks scattered immediately. Then they upped the ante. They were able to get the sharks to go into a feeding frenzy, and then they did the same test again. And despite the sharks being in a very aggressive state, they fled. What's more, it took several minutes for them to return. So apparently, sharks don't like it when they detect the essence of one of their fallen brethren. But why? It's possible the sharks feel it means there's something that can kill them nearby, or maybe it overloads their senses. It's hard to say, but it worked. Oh, if you're curious, yes, there are actually places that sell essence of dead shark, just in case you want to avoid your own crazy shark encounter. Number 1. Shark saves man. Given all the stories of sharks that have been told by people and in the media, the idea of a shark saving a person's life might seem a bit ludicrous. However, it's something that has happened more than you realize. Toakai Tatoi had been adrift out on the open ocean for 15 weeks and all seemed lost, until a shark came around and guided him to a rescue boat. I looked over the side and saw a 6-foot shark circling my boat, but it was mainly bumping against the hull. After seeing the shark, he looked around and saw a boat not too far away. Of course, I was able to wave frantically at them and they came and picked me up. If that shark hadn't nudged me awake, the crew of the boat might have thought I wasn't in trouble and might have carried on sailing past me. See? Sharks aren't always so bad. Number 10. Death in the Bahamas. An American woman has been killed by a shark near Rose Island in the Bahamas. According to local authorities, it all happened while Jordan Lindsay of California was swimming with her family. They had gone as a group to do a bit of snorkeling. The police said in a statement that they believe Jordan was not only attacked by a single aggressive shark, but actually bitten by at least 3 different sharks. The poor girl was only 21 years old. She was with her father, her 2 brothers, and a mother, and yet all the sharks ganged up on her, ripping Jordan to shreds so fast that nobody even had time to react. By the time anyone realized what was going on, it was too late. Jordan's mother was just feet away as the sharks were taking bites out of her daughter. She managed to get Jordan back to shore after the vicious and sudden attack, but it was too late. The sharks did some pretty good damage to Jordan. Her right arm was torn off completely, her left arm was gnawed on like a piece of corn, and both of her legs were shredded like she'd gone through a cheese grater. Emergency services showed up quickly, but by the time they managed to transport Jordan to the hospital, she was already dead. Jordan was a student at Loyola Marymount University and will be dearly missed by her family and friends. Number 9. Surfing instructor. A Georgia surf instructor had a close brush with death when a shark just about ripped his entire leg off. This happened in the waters off Tybee Island. The instructor's name is Atsushi Yamada, known locally as Hot Sushi. He works at the Hot Sushi's Happy Surf Camp helping youngsters master the sport of surfing. Yamada, who was born in Japan, was sitting on his board in the water with the student when the shark began circling. He noticed the ferocious beast but couldn't react in time, and suddenly he felt what he described as being hit by a baseball bat. It was the shark's teeth trying to take a bite out of him. Yamada managed to keep the student with him safe, taking the full brunt of the attack. The shark left him with 3 huge gashes on his leg, then fled back into the deeper water. Yamada got to shore and corralled all of his students out of the water. The beach was closed for the day, and just later that same week, he was back out surfing. According to Yamada himself, he believes it was probably an Atlantic black-tip shark or bull shark that attacked him. He also said that he is grateful that the shark went after him and not one of his students. He never really got a good look at it. The creature swooped in, took a bite, and then swam away. Number 8. Bitten by a shark, punched by a monkey. Eric Norrie has had some pretty bad luck with nature. He was recently recovering from a near-death experience he had in the Bahamas when a shark bit off a piece of his leg during a spearfishing trip. According to Eric, the shark grabbed his leg, he heard a ripping sound, and when he turned around, the water was filled with blood. He had to use part of his spearfishing equipment to make a crude tourniquet to stop himself from bleeding to death as he desperately swam back to the sandbar. He really thought he was going to die. But believe it or not, this is not Eric's first brush with death. He's had some other pretty nasty encounters with nature and her creatures. It started when he was only 10 years old. A tree he was standing under was struck by lightning, sending him backwards as if a bomb had exploded in front of him. Later on in life, he was attacked by a rattlesnake while taking a stroll around a country club and nearly lost his leg, kind of like what happened with the most recent shark attack. But perhaps the weirdest animal encounter came from a trip to the Amazon, in which Eric was attacked by a monkey. And then it happened again a second time when his wife locked him in a cage with a small monkey as a practical joke, only to have the monkey bite him and try to claw his eyes out. And now, after surviving this latest shark encounter, Eric feels like he and Mother Nature have reached something of a stalemate. Why do you think Eric has such terrible luck with animals? Number 7. Jet ski attack. A man in Queensland, Australia on a jet ski was recently attacked by a shark off the coast of North Stradbroke Island. And to be honest, it was kind of his fault. He had actually spotted about 5 of the huge animals with his drone even before he got in the water. Rick Manning then decided he wanted to get closer to the sharks using a jet ski. He thought it would be fun to circle the deadly animals. It turned out not to be the best idea because one of them attacked. According to what Manning told 7 News Australia, the shark lunged at him with such fury that he could see the animal's teeth as they just about clamped down on his foot. He knew at that moment he had made a serious error. The shark was about 3 meters long. It was a kind of bull shark. Its teeth so sharp and deadly that it actually managed to rip off a piece of the jet ski. It ripped right through the fiberglass. This is no surprise considering bull sharks are some of the most aggressive sharks in the water, named after bulls because of how huge and heavy they are. According to the International Shark Attack File, bull sharks are responsible for somewhere around 100 unprovoked human attacks, with about 25 fatalities. However, there are probably dozens, if not hundreds more attacks that have not been reported. As for Manning and his shark encounter, he was almost knocked off the jet ski but managed to cling onto it for dear life. He was then so frightened that he sped back to shore and refused to get back in the water, which is, what you do when there are sharks right there. Number 6. Lifeguard attacked. While on duty at Hilton Head Island, a lifeguard was attacked brutally and mercilessly by a crazy shark. The lifeguard has not been named for privacy reasons, but we do know that the Hilton Head Island Fire Rescue responded to a 911 call at about 11:45 in the morning and needed to transport the lifeguard to the nearest hospital so that he could be airlifted to Savannah for immediate treatment. The lifeguard suffered deep lacerations to his upper body but was relatively stable when transported to the hospital. Unsurprisingly, this was not the first shark attack on the East Coast this year. It actually happened about a week after the surfing instructor at Sushi Yamada was attacked in Georgia. And what makes this really strange is that in both cases, experts believe the shark responsible was a blacktip. But could it be the same shark? It's unlikely, but not impossible. The blacktip may have bitten the Japanese surf instructor in Georgia and then swam his merry little way down to South Carolina to bite the lifeguard. Do you think it was the same shark? Maybe this particular shark was just having a rough month. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Drunk and disorderly. A day at the beach turned into a deadly affair when a man waded into the water to pee. This is a prime example of why you should never pee in the ocean. Just minutes after the drunk man waddled into the water to relieve himself, bystander Adriano Gomez witnessed a surge of blood in the water like something out of the movie Jaws. The victim in this scenario was Marcelo Rocha Santos, a 51-year-old man who had been drinking with friends. It was the middle of the afternoon and everyone was having an awesome time. Rather than seeking out a toilet, Marcelo simply walked into the water to do his business in the glory of nature. But what he didn't realize was that when he began to relieve himself, he was doing so on top of a shark. He literally peed directly onto the apex predator. Not the smartest move. As you can imagine, the shark was not super happy about this. In retaliation for being peed on, the shark bit off Marcelo's hand with one great chomp and then ripped off a massive piece of his leg. His friend was even standing beside him when it happened and couldn't believe his eyes. His buddies managed to drag him back to safety. After all, they were only in water up to their waists. But it was too late. Marcelo lay lifeless and bloody in the sand. He bled out from his wounds and could not be revived. Number 4. Close encounter. A young girl in Maryland has been horribly wounded in a suspected shark attack while swimming in water only up to her knees. This girl was just 12 years old and left the encounter with at least 20 teeth wounds that required dozens of stitches. She was vacationing with her family in Ocean City when she felt something brush against her shins. Then, all of a sudden, she was bleeding everywhere. The poor girl was only in 6th grade at the time and had to awkwardly stomp out of the water, leaving a trail of blood behind. Luckily, it must have been a very small shark that attacked her. The girl's father scooped her up in his arms and rushed her to safety. An EMT nurse who happened to be nearby helped stop the bleeding, and she was rushed to the hospital where she got 42 stitches. The photos uploaded online of the bite are pretty gnarly. Whatever chomped the girl had a huge mouth and left its imprint forever scarred just below her knee. She was actually quite lucky that it didn't come back for another bite, or she might have lost half her leg. Number 3. The oldest shark attack. About 3,000 years ago, off the southeastern coast of Japan, a man was killed by a shark. After the brutal attack, the victim was brought back to shore missing their right leg and left hand. They were then buried in the sand, where they rested peacefully until just recently, when archaeologists got a hold of the victim's bones. A new analysis of the man's partial skeleton, excavated over 100 years ago from a village cemetery near the Seto Inland Sea, has revealed that the man comes from the ancient Jomon culture of Japan. He is also the oldest known human victim of a deadly shark attack in history. According to archaeologist J. Alyssa White from the University of Oxford, radiocarbon dating put his death at anywhere from 3,391 to 3,031 years ago. The team identified at least 790 gouges and punctures left behind by the shark. They believe that the victim probably lost his left hand trying to beat the shark away, then was killed by a series of devastating bites that ripped open his major leg arteries and caused him to rapidly bleed to death. When he was recovered from the ocean, his mutilated left leg was probably barely hanging on by a thread, and whoever buried him put it on his chest before shoveling dirt onto his grave. Number 2. Jackass Sharks. While filming a stunt for Shark Week, one of the stars of the hit film series Jackass was nearly eaten. The filming was done for an episode called Jackass Shark Week, featuring members of the original Jackass crew like Steve-O and Chris Pontius. They were doing stunts for science, but it didn't really work out. Pontius tried to get a bull shark to charge at him as if it was a real bull. They dangled bait, trying to get bit on purpose, and Steve-O got good and sweaty on an exercise bike before leaping into the water to see if bull sharks were able to smell human sweat. But the last stunt proved to be the deadliest. When another member of the crew, McInerney, tried to jump over the sharks on a wakeboard. He missed the landing, splashed into the water, and was immediately swarmed by hungry Caribbean reef sharks. One of the sharks took a bite out of his hand. The crew and the medics jumped into action to save him, and they managed to get him out of the water just in time before another shark took yet another bite out. The bite was so brutal that the shooting had to be stopped, and McInerney was taken away in a speedboat for medical attention. Number 1. Surfing disaster. A horrifying recent death in Australia just goes to show that sharks really don't care how old you are. To them, you're really just a floating bag of meat. At Walleye Beach on a Saturday afternoon, Manny Hart DeVille, a 15-year-old surfer, was mauled to death by an unidentified shark. He was catching some waves, getting some good stunts in, when the shark sabotaged him on his surfboard, ripping a chunk out of his upper left thigh. Shortly after his friends dragged him to shore, Manny bled out from his injuries and was pronounced dead. First aid did nothing to help, and there was no stopping the blood gushing out of his leg. CPR efforts failed to revive him, and the young man stopped breathing and went cold still on the beach. Manny lived in the small coastal village where he surfed, and that community has been devastated by the attack. A statement from the Clarence Valley Council said that the community would be hurting for the young boy's tragic death, and while the attack was described as shocking, there's not really anything shocking about getting eaten by a shark in Australia. As you can tell from today's video, it happens so frequently that if you even dare step foot in the water, you're fair game. I mean, you are stepping into the shark's house. Even just wading up to your knees can result in a shark biting off your legs. Thanks for watching. How do you feel about swimming with sharks? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to hit the subscribe button and come back again for another awesome video. See you next time. Bye!